an overstatement. He's tiny. But like Joe Dean wasn't exactly the biggest player at inter-county level, and I would definitely see comparisons between the two of them, and I'd be very wary of blowing him up too much. But unfortunately, his performances mean that you can do nothing but blow him up. Like the other night, he missed the semi-final against Dublin with a concussion. He probably hadn't done much hurling in about 2.5 weeks, and some of the scores, John, the goal was obviously brilliant, but the 2 points in the first half, say he was about 9 yards out from the end line for one of them, and maybe 10 for the other one off either side. Just a brilliant player. And as I said, there's a bit of a Joe Dean style to it, an impish kind of player with a lovely drop of the shoulder and a lovely burst of pace as well, and a killer instinct in front of goals. Like Cormac Egan was going through for that goal the other night, and there was a better option on his right hand side, a much better option, but Screeney was on his left, the angle was tighter, but he knew to get it to him, and he knew that he'd take care of business, and he did. And just to win it with 14 men as well, John, there's probably a lot of obstacles they had to overcome the other night, and they overcame all of them. And the most heartening thing about this team is, as skillful as they are, they will work like dogs all over the pitch, and you just cannot buy that. And there were only 6 of last year's minors involved starting the other night. That means, there's another 9, 10, 11 guys to come in over the next couple of years, which is hugely heartening. A smaller county will hang their hat on a team like that, so we'll do everything we can to get as many of those lads through to senior level. Screeney definitely been one of them in particular.
Tonight it's Kilkenny against Dublin in the Leinster Championship, a new regime on the north side without Brian Cody. How would you compare that team last season that reached the All-Ireland final to what Derek Ling is managing at the moment, based on what you've seen so far in the round robin?
Yeah, I haven't seen too much of a difference, John, to be honest with you. Obviously, they were down a couple of personnel. Conor Brown obviously played the All-Ireland final last year. He's not around. Mikey Carey hadn't been around, but he's back involved in the fold, and we're probably going to see him over the coming weeks as well. It's kind of difficult to get a read on them, John. If you look at every team in Munster, like, it's so easy to get a read on every team because they have to go out and throw everything at every game. You basically, your eyes won't tell a lie. With Kilkenny, outside of that Galway game, have we learned much about them yet? The real tests probably will come in time. I suppose that probably leads into another conversation of Kilkenny and Galway. They'll go hell for leather when they're playing against each other, but they can probably have the handbrake off somewhat against some of the other teams. Whereas you look at the teams in Munster, they're literally killing each other to get points. And then maybe, like Clare did last year, they come in a bit kind of punch drunk into the All-Ireland stages, and Kilkenny take advantage. And Galway nearly took advantage of Limerick being in that same boat last year in the All-Ireland semi-final too. So there's definitely a bit of an imbalance, you'd have to say, between the two provinces. But as regards Kilkenny, very hard to get too much of a read on them at the moment. I wouldn't say too many things have changed from the Cody regime. Ling played under him, his entire career. He coached alongside him as well. A lot of those same kind of values are going to be carried through, with a few probably modern tweaks. Trying maybe more shorter puckouts, trying to go through the lines a bit more. But kind of difficult to get, a realistic read on where they are at this moment in time.
Dublin beat Wexford. They did the big thing they needed to do in the round robin, so they've a bit of a free shot at this in a way.
They do. They beat Wexford last year and didn't get out of the group as well, so that would definitely be a worry, maybe, that Wexford can, if they're able to take care of Westmeath tomorrow down at Wexford Park, that they potentially could go to, or they could welcome Kilkenny to Wexford Park again the next day and potentially get points on the board there and topple Dublin. But Dublin probably do have a bit of a free shot. This is it's kind of mad when you think about it, though, John. Dublin beat them in 2013 in the championship, went on to win Leinster. They hadn't beaten them since 1942 before then, and they haven't beaten them since in the 7 championship games that they've played since. So like in Leinster this weekend, like I kind of did a piece for the match programme at the weekend, and you're kind of thinking like it's probably less of a miracle if Dublin beat Kilkenny, but if you're looking at the other 2 games, Antrim and Galway, like it would take a minor miracle probably for Antrim to get a result there. And same with Westmeath and Wexford, even though Westmeath did draw with Wexford last year. So like you're looking at a very lopsided Leinster championship, and then on the flip side in Munster, like there's no miracles or anything needed there for anybody to win a game, really. Maybe outside of maybe Waterford at the moment, who are really, really struggling. But Dublin got the result they wanted against Wexford, and I'm sure they're going to be trying to build on it and bring the Cats at least down the home straight this evening.
I love to be a fly on the wall in Limerick the last 3 weeks, Michael. They're at the pin of their collar to a degree, because they know if Cork beat Clare tomorrow, and if they fail to beat Tipperary, they're out of the championship. They have to beat Tipperary, they have to beat Cork in the next couple of games. Look, the last 3 years they've done it. They've responded to every single challenge that's been presented to them, winning 3 in a row. What do you think the tactics and psychology have been the last few weeks with John Kiley and Paul Connacht?
You're speaking of flies on the wall there. I think there's a lot of people think that they're flies on the wall because there's a lot of wild rumours flying around midweek, and obviously
I think it's always been a Limerick thing, hasn't it? Always a Limerick county for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I was even chatting Mark Foley during the week, and he said even during his career it was the same thing. There were always bits and pieces, and I was chatting to Kieran Carey, and he said the same as well. There was always bits and pieces of rumours flying around. I suppose when you're champions, there's always a likelihood for there to be even more rumours. Obviously, there seems to be very little, if any, truth to any of the rumours flying around, particularly with Gerard Hegarty, who starts tomorrow, and I'd be very surprised if he doesn't deliver a huge display and answer any critics that he has tomorrow. But as regards from a Limerick point of view, we're probably all maybe guilty of overreacting a small bit. When they were beaten in 2019 by Kilkenny, a shock defeat, they were beaten by 1 point. When they were beaten by Clare 3 weeks ago, again, that was 1 point. They've 3 weeks to kind of, right some wrongs maybe. And I suppose the big thing is, when Clare put them under pressure, they really went man for man. They took a lot of chances. They really, really went pressed up high on the puck out, didn't give Nicky Quaid the options that he would usually have, didn't give him the grass that he would usually like to put the puck out into. And it's going to be fascinating to see if Tipp do something similar. Tipp have really caused Limerick trouble over the last 4 or 5 seasons, but just not for a sustained period, not for more than 40, 45 minutes. Remember, they were up by 9 points, I think it was, or 10 points in a Munster final only a couple of years
2021,
ago. Blitz Limerick off the pitch, and Limerick's this ability to just flick a switch and solve a problem mid-game. They've had an uncanny ability to do that in recent years. Now, they've probably struggled to do it in their 2 games so far, but to write them off going into the weekend would be very, very foolish, I would think. And I'm expecting a massive, massive reaction. And even without Sean Finn, who's obviously out with the cruciate now that he picked up in the Clare game, you just feel there's something brewing. You feel there's a big performance coming. As you said there, when they've been pushed to the pin of their collar, they've generally always reacted in fairly spectacular fashion. And that's what tees up tomorrow's game beautifully, I think.
Clare 11 points, Kilkenny 10 in the minor hurling semi-final at the moment down in Thurles. That's half time. Brian Mbumo was equalised for Brentford against Spurs 1-1 in the Premier League, 51 minutes on the watch. Tipperary then, Michael, have scored 7 goals in 2 games and conceded 7. So where's the focus tomorrow? Attack or defence?
Yeah, that's what I was saying about kind of risk or reward. It's one thing going gung-ho for it. And, they got the goals obviously against Clare, a couple of them mistakes, albeit. But you really need to mind your house first and foremost, don't you? That's why they've a tricky kind of a balancing act to get right tomorrow. They don't want to leave themselves too open at the back, but they want to take chances up front. And getting the balance between that is really, really tricky. If Limerick break the line, and are able to bag 2 or 3 goals against Tipp tomorrow, they won't be beaten. So finding that balancing act for Liam Cahill is going to be really, really difficult. They've a new keeper in, Rhys Shelley's in goals, Owen Connolly's in defence. Bonner Matter gets another start up front, his first championship start of this year. So it's the flip side of Tipp is it's not a free shot or anything like that tomorrow, far from it. But they do have the caveat of probably playing Waterford next week that they will be expected to win that game. They will be expected to get 5 points on the board. But when you think of all the misery that Limerick have inflicted on Tipp in the last 6 years, beat them in 18, beat them in the Munster final in 19, beat them comprehensively in 20, beat them comprehensively in 21, beat them by 5 or 6 last year again. This is literally a chance for Tipp to right all of those wrongs in one fell swoop and knock the 4 in a row chasing All-Ireland champions, the 5 in a row chasing Munster champions out of the championship. And if you were a Tipp player, you'd surely be smelling a bit of blood. You'd surely be smelling the opportunity to just get rid of that big Limerick juggernaut, get them out of the equation at this stage. And I'm sure they'll throw everything at it and they'll do everything they possibly can to do that. And even, it's fascinating, John, tomorrow, and we haven't spoken about the game yet, but with Cork and Clare, if Cork win, that ramps up the pressure even further on Limerick.
Beforehand, because it's 2 o'clock, yeah.
So, the dynamic of, they're going to want to know the result, but, you can't be focusing on it too much beforehand as well. If Cork do win, that ramps up the pressure. That means Limerick definitely have to win. I don't know, it's a home venue for Tipp. If Cork do win that game, you'd be expecting that result to be blared out over the tannoy a couple of times just to ramp up the pressure a bit more, particularly because it's on home soil in Tipp. I'd imagine it's like that time Munster played in the Heineken Cup final, and there was pictures of the Munster support in Limerick showing up on the big screen. You'd use any little edge you can get. So it'd be fascinating to see, like, is there just one person within the Limerick setup that just knows of the result down in Cusack Park and just says it to John Kiley? Are there lads checking their phones in the toilet 15 minutes before they go out? Do you know what I mean? I just think it adds a fascinating dynamic to it. You know, they know they're well more aware of the situation and the equation before they throw in for their game. It does make it a bit more interesting again. But if anything, it heaps the pressure even more on Limerick, particularly if Cork get a result.
I'm just thinking of a comedy value here, and obviously this wouldn't happen, but imagine the Tannoy saying, Cork have won, and if Tipperary win, Limerick are out of the championship.
There you go. Imagine the place would absolutely erupt.
And it's going to be full as well. Great to see Munster hurling with a full stadium in a game there's a lot of jeopardy on it.
Oh yeah, big time, yeah. I think the tickets were, a lot of the terrace and the stand tickets were sold out, immediately after Tipperary's game with Cork a couple of weeks ago. There's a good buzz around Tipp. There's a good buzz around what Liam Catlett is doing in Tipp at the moment. And as I said to you, I think they'll be smelling blood, and I think they'll leave no stone unturned to do whatever they can to get a result. Ultimately, will they be able to get a result? Like 75% of me just thinks that we'll see the same old Limerick tomorrow. There's that maybe 20-25% where you're thinking maybe they are that veteran boxer leaning back on the ropes. Maybe they are under a bit of pressure. Maybe, some team just needs to come along and push them over, basically. But that's a much bigger task than just what I'm after saying there. It's going to be so difficult, and Limerick are going to be hurting. And realistically, they hadn't lost a championship game since Kilkenny beat them in 19. Look how they reacted to that one defeat, that 1 point defeat. They were unbeaten in 17 games thereafter. So they know how to react to a defeat, much like the Dublin footballers did against Donegal in 14 and went on that 6 in a row run after. Limerick will have learned plenty of lessons, and I'd be expecting to see a few little different tactical kind of setups from them tomorrow.
What are you looking to see? Because obviously Jason Ford is out for Tipp as well, the free taker. So what are you looking to see specifically from Limerick tactically?
Well, if Tipp are gonna push up on Limerick, which you'd imagine they would, that means Limerick have to go with something a little different. They're not going to be able to get puck outs into space. They're not going to be able to, Nicky Quaid's not going to be able to land a puck out in it for Gearóid Hegarty to just run onto. Maybe we see Gearóid Hegarty going into the edge of the square at some stage. Maybe we see something a little different there. Maybe there was lots of space in front of the Limerick full forward line against Clare. They didn't play them. Maybe we see Hegarty going into the edge of the square with Conan at some stage. Maybe just something. Maybe we see Kyle Hayes back at 11, rampaging and just causing Tipperary problems maybe that they wouldn't have been expecting. Just on that as well, when Tipp played Limerick in 2020, Hayes had played wing back. He'd played wing back in their previous game, in their quarter-final clash. All of a sudden, he was up centre forward, and Tipp didn't know what to do. So maybe that could be something. Throw a little bit of a spanner in the works. Now, the only thing is, with Sean Finn being out, the likelihood of Hayes going in attack has probably been decreased a fair bit because they maybe don't have the same defensive options. But I would be expecting to see something different.
As a Clare fan, with my late dad being from Clare, I was at the Munster final last year, one of the best games I've seen in the last 20, 30 years. But Clare were shot after it. They were gone. Have they been able to, is it a case that you can pace yourself a bit better this year in the round robin? Because once again, they kind of have to beat Cork and hope that Limerick lose if they don't. So Ennis, Cork and Clare, I find that they drew in the league. I find it very hard to analyse this in terms of who has the edge on it. Yeah,
last year Clare had a tough run in Munster. They had Limerick, I think, as their last game. They drew with them in Ennis, then they had them in the Munster final again, and they went to extra time. Like, I can't imagine the energy expended, both physical and emotional, going into that. The fact that they played Limerick, had a couple of weeks, then had what I would call really a tune-up against Waterford, a game that they never really looked like losing, and they were in kind of cruise control in the second half. They don't have a bruising game maybe going into this Cork game. I expect them to hit the ground running big time. Outside of Tipp, who've had really good results in Cusack Park, it's generally been a fortress for Clare. Aidan McCarthy's probably touch and go with a quad injury. Small doubts about Dave McInerney, but I think he's going to play. So they have a pretty much a clean bill of health going into this game. And I like a lot of what I've seen of Clare so far this year. I think they did what they had to do against Waterford the last day. If they produce what they did in the first half, they'll be in trouble against Cork, but I'd be expecting more of what I saw against Limerick that evening in the Gaelic grounds. And they just have so many attacking options and different types of forwards that can hurt you in different ways. They have a big bull at the edge of the square in Peter Duggan. They've the silk of Tony Kelly. Aidan McCarthy's a different type of option as well. Ian Galvin is all pace. David Reedy, I think, is back this weekend, is all pace as well. Shane O'Donnell is kind of a mixture of two or three of those lads, nearly all thrown into one. So they can hurt you in several different ways. Probably just about expecting Clare to get over the line in that one, probably by a score, I'd say. And if they do, they'll be in a Munster final again.
And John Conan is so crucial. I mean, Tony Caddy's the best hurler in the county ever, probably, but John Conan is the fulcrum.
Oh yeah, big time. And we saw what his absence led to in last year's All-Ireland semi-final against Kilkenny. They were at 6s and 7s at the back, and it's amazing to think of a player, who predominantly played all of his hurling at wing forward. I think he won an All-Star wing forward in 13, and then he went into the full forward line. He didn't get an All-Star in 13. I don't think he won an All-Star in 14 and 18, and then he goes back centre back. And amazingly, he actually said in a recent interview, he did his cruciate, and it has helped him to basically prolong his career an awful lot more. He said he had all sorts of nagging kind of injuries going into that. He went and did a strength and conditioning program and a personal training program while he was recovering from the cruciate to make sure that he'd get back in his best shape as possible. And he's in the form of his career at the moment. As you say, he's the fulcrum of their defence. He holds everything together. And crucially for the forwards as well, Conan is a defender with a forward's mindset, in that the ball he gives into a forward is so sympathetic to a forward. It's always out to the side of them. It's always a ball that a forward wants. And he's crucial for them at the weekend. His battle with could be Conor Cahalane, could be Luke Meade, could even be Conor Lahan in around him as well. And how he fares at the weekend will go a long way to Clare getting a result.
Brian Mbeumo has scored again for Brentford 2-1. They lead Spurs now in the Premier League, 61 minutes on the watch. With Cork, I've always kind of felt, what is the Cork identity? What's the 15 here? And you're looking at the last game when they showed all that spirit to come back again and draw against Tipperary. You had Brian Hayes, Shane Kingston, Luke Meade coming off the bench. Do we still know, does Pat Ryan now know his best 15?
Oh, I don't think so, being honest with you. You look at it, Luke Meade is in, Conor Cahalane is in, Shane Kingston is named on the bench. It's amazing. Kingston's a really interesting one in the sense of when he started, he's probably been a lot quieter than when he comes in off the bench. He just seems to be able to cause wreck. I don't know if that's because defenders are tired and he's coming in. He's one of the fastest probably forwards in the game. Owen Downey started fullback the last day. He's out at the weekend. I don't, apart from Kieran Joyce at 6, and probably Patrick Horgan at 14 and Patrick Collins in the goals, it's probably difficult enough there's a lot of movable pieces there, and I think they have a squad, probably 21 or 22 players at a very, very similar level, but the pieces are kind of interchangeable. And if you look at their formation for the weekend, there's probably 2 or 3 out, 2 or 3 in. I think crucially for them, they still need to have that bounce from the bench, and they still have the way the team is named, anyway, they still have Kingston and a few more to come in off the bench, and they'll need that. They'll need a massive bounce off the bench to go over Clare and Ennis.
So I feel from hearing you briefly, you're going for Limerick and Clare tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't think there'll be much between much in the two games, but Limerick to get back on the horse and Clare to get back on, Clare to book their Munster final place.
And wins for Galway, Wexford and Kilkenny.
Realistically, anything outside of that would be a massive shock.
And have you about 30 seconds, Michael? Can you sum up Waterford's season?
Oh, I think you might need more than 30 seconds.
Minutes.
But it's just seriously disappointing. Anytime your Munster campaign is over with a game to spare, it's very, very worrying. You look at it, John, they've played 17 games across minor, under 20 and senior in both football and hurling, and they've lost all of them. 17 championship games. That's seriously worrying. When you have, legends in the county like Ken McGrath, Owen Kelly and John Milan kind of voicing their opinion about how worried they are about the future of Waterford, that's not a good sign. And to me, I think, I know Davy was very vocal in the aftermath of the Clare game. He's talking about the project. I think next weekend will tell a hell of a lot about whether that project is going to go into 2024 and 2025.
Michael Verney, thanks so much. Enjoy the matches.
Cheers, John. Have a good one.
Michael Verney there from the Irish Independent, casting his eye over the hurling action. I'm going to chat to you again from the Aviva Stadium at 3:30 as we start the build-up to the Heineken Champions Cup final between Leinster and La Rochelle. Remember, we've live commentary. We're on air until 8 o'clock. But for now, stay tuned to Football Saturday coming up with Kathleen McNamee, Dan McDonnell and Damien Delaney. Off the Ball Saturday on News Talk is back after the news.
Get real-time updates at News Talk FM on Twitter. Never miss a story.
Soft Cell, live, an open-air summer show, St Anne's Park, Dublin, Saturday, June 3rd. With special guests, OMD, Sophie Ellis-Bextor and Heaven 17. Tickets from $49.90 on sale now from Ticketmaster.ie. Additional charges may apply, subject to licence. Soft Cell, with special guests, OMD, Sophie